the cloud. Okay, we want to mention the art site of David Yehuda's mother, right?
Yes.
Rachel Leah Bas
Lewis.
Lewis. And Shoma should have an Eliyahu.
That's correct.
So we're continuing with our review of the laws for Pesach. I wanted to focus primarily on the things which are unique for this year, with the Kfiyas of Erev Pesach falling on Shabbos. It's a Kfiyas, it's a setup that doesn't happen all that often. It comes together with Purim falling on Friday. If I got this correct, the last time this happened was in 2008. And the next time it's going to happen is in 2025. It's in 4 years from now. And then after that, it's not going to happen again for 20 years till 2045. So
we all live to see
we long, happy, and healthy years. Okay. So first of all, in chronological order, there is a fast of the firstborns on Erev Pesach, on the 14th of Nisan. This includes firstborns, whether you're firstborn just for your father or just for your mother, or even if there was a non-viable pregnancy, a stillborn or something before you, whereas for other laws you would not be considered a firstborn, such as for inheritance, but for this you'd still be considered a firstborn. So that is pushed back to Thursday, which is the 12th of Nisan. Now, the truth is, you could say, well, let's push it back to Friday. What's wrong with Friday? Now, so it's interesting. It says that we don't, you know how you say lechatchila in English? A priori. That's the word we were talking about last week, right? Okay, so we don't lechatchila set up a fast on a Friday. And one reason given is because on a fast day, you're preoccupied with davening, it's longer davening, and you say slichas, and so you'll be less available to prepare for Shabbos. Another reason given is that it's not respectful to the Shabbos to come into Shabbos in a state of starvation. So that's why we don't initially set up a fast to be on Friday. Now, the truth is that when Pesach falls, not like it does this year, when Pesach falls on Sunday, and Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, but when Pesach falls on Shabbos, and Erev Pesach is on Friday, we do have the fast of the firstborns on Friday. We don't push it back to Thursday. But it seems that what happens is, because we have this year, we have to push it back anyway. So instead of we're not so against having the fast on Friday, but if we're pushing it back anyway, we may as well push it back to Thursday. Now, in fact, it's customary nowadays, even though it's interesting that in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe is much more leaning to be strict about this and to say that we should actually fast, or if possible. But nevertheless, the widespread custom is to be lenient, and that instead of fasting, we participate in a Sudas mitzvah. Most commonly, it's going to be a siyum masechta, a meal, or saying l'chaim, celebrating the conclusion of a masechta, and then you partake in that, and then because that's a mitzvah to partake in, and then then you've already finished the fast, so you no longer have to continue fasting. It doesn't have to be a siyum masechta. If you happen to have a bris, I actually once had the opportunity to be at a pidyon haben, the redeeming of a firstborn on Erev Pesach, so that's just as good. Now, logically, it would make sense to say that if you participate in a siyum on the 13th on the Thursday, so then you should have to fast on Friday, because we pushed it back to Thursday. But if you didn't keep that because you had got this sidetracked by attending a siyum, then you should have to fast on Friday. And so indeed there are poskim who say that you should make another siyum on Friday. However, yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. However, the Chabad custom is not like that. It's actually a sicha. The Rabbi discusses this, which is in part of the schedule for the project of Kutis Sichas, The schedule is to learn it actually on Pesach. I'm considering possibly doing one of the Sikha classes in that Sikha coming up either this week or next week. But in practice, we don't do that. We say the fast has moved from Shabbos to Thursday for all intent and purposes, and then once you've attended the Siyum on Thursday, you no longer need to be concerned. No. Then the next thing is B'dikas Chametz. So B'dikas Chametz this year is pushed back to Thursday night. So we've already said that you could start doing B'dikas Chametz with a flashlight or with light from the window, open window, closed window, the different opinions in the days preceding. But the mitzvah of B'dikas Chametz, which is when you say it with a bracha, is to be done on Thursday night. So basically, the procedure for B'dikas Chametz this year is no different than any other year, except for the fact that it's 24 hours earlier. So just a couple of reviews about those halachas. So the mitzvah to do it is, we mentioned last week, immediately after nightfall, which, if I recall correctly, in Chicago is around 7:45, give or take a few minutes. So, however, if you're going to be davening Ma'ariv with a minyan, we have a special dispensation that you're allowed to daven Ma'ariv with a minyan first, but then immediately after Ma'ariv, go home right away and don't do anything else first. If you can't be home at that time because your work does not allow you to be home at that time, then best to make a shliach, somebody else in your family, to do B'dikas Chametz for you. Ideally, it should be a man over the age of bar mitzvah, but if that's not possible, it may be your wife as well. The truth is, it doesn't have to be someone in your family. If you have a neighbor who could do it for you, that's fine too. Now, there is a minhag to put out pieces of bread. Al Pi Kabbalah, we put out 10 pieces of bread. The custom is that each one of those pieces should be small, but that together, combined, the 10 together should be the size of a kazayis. Nowadays, you don't even have to butcher yourself anymore. You could just go to the local Jewel or Kultov or Hungarian and buy pre-packaged, little challah things in pre-sealed plastic. So it saves you the hassle of dealing with the crumbs if you would like. If you do make them yourself, you do not wrap it in silver foil. Wrap it in paper or in plastic. But if you wrap it in silver foil, then when you burn it, it's not really going to burn very well. So don't wrap them in silver foil. Now, it's also recommended that you can do it yourself. It doesn't have to be someone else. You could put out the 10 pieces of bread, but it seems to have become the custom, not quite sure why, but it seems to become the custom that your wife or your kids put it out, and then you don't know where they are, and you have to find them. So it's recommended that they keep a list of where all the 10 pieces are, because if you can't find one, then it gets complicated. However, it's very important to note that when you do B'dikas Chametz, you're not looking for the 10 pieces of bread. You're looking for any chametz. And as I saw in one of the Sfarim, he says, Pashut, it's obvious that if your B'dikas Chametz is just to look for the 10 pieces, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah, and your bracha is a bracha in vain. People think it's a common mistake that people make, that you're looking for the 10 pieces. You're not looking for the 10 pieces. The entire area that you're checking, this is all areas, again, depending on how much you've done the nights before or not, but these are areas where chametz has been year-round. And even though you may have Pesach cleaned them, you haven't done what halachically classifies as checking that there's no chametz there. And therefore, you have to check that there's no chametz in all those places. Okay. Now, so the time for B'dikas Chametz, like we said, is after nightfall. But already from half an hour before sunset, so approximately, I don't have the times in front of me right now, but approximately an hour before that, it's forbidden to do any activities which may cause you to become sidetracked. So you're not allowed to study Torah or engage in study. You can look up the halacha, but not to get involved in go to a class or something like that. You're not allowed to eat a meal. A snack is to have a little bite. That's okay. But no meals, no taking a nap. That's certainly something which could lead you to fall asleep for longer. That's from half an hour before sunset. Once the time for the B'dika actually comes, which is at nightfall, then you're not allowed to eat anything, not allowed to drink anything, not allowed to do anything besides immediately to do B'dikas Chametz. The Chabad custom is that if there are other members of the household around, it's not customary for the wife to do this, but if you have sons over the age of bar mitzvah, so it's customary that they stand next to you when you make the bracha of b'dikas chametz, and then they have their own candle and their own set. So they yotze the bracha from you. So the father will say the bracha loud and discharge the obligation of, let's say, his over bar mitzvah-year-old son, and then what does the son do? So first he does a little bit of b'dikas chametz right there in that room, because you don't want to have any interruption between the recitation of the bracha and in beginning to do the mitzvah. So you do a little bit in that room, and then he goes to his own, so before you start, you set up, okay, I'll do upstairs, you do downstairs, whatever, something like that. And this way you have both the virtue of doing the mitzvah yourself, mitzvah b'yosem mibishluchai, and also the virtue of sharing the zchus with other members of your family. If you have children or guests for Pesach who have their own household, who are married, and they're coming, so then they may wish to do their entire bedika themselves. So they'll do their own 10 pieces in their own room and give you $1 to rent the room from you and do it that way. That's of course, and then they could say their own bracha. That's fine as well. Any chametz that you find, the 10 pieces and anything else, you're going to put aside in a safe place, out of reach of any kids, to burn the next day. Now, it does say that if somebody is fasting, let's say, usually b'dikas chametz is the night before the fast of the firstborns. But if somebody is, this year it's after, so the firstborn is fasting and he's, then there's allowance for him to have a drink of water or something small to break his fast before doing the b'dika. Now, it's not common nowadays that people actually fast, but if there is a dire circumstance that you're rushing home and you have a headache and this and that, and you want to be able to do b'dika with the proper focus, so then in such circumstances you could allow to have at least a taste of a bite of something, not a meal, but a small bite and drink to give yourself the energy to do b'dikas chametz. That's fine. Then we come to Friday. So Friday is this interesting day because in many ways practically it's like Erev Pesach, because it's the last weekday before Pesach, but it's not actually Erev Pesach. So for example, whereas in a regular year, on Erev Pesach, all haircutting and laundry and cutting nails must be done before midday. This year there's no restrictions. You can have haircuts, laundry, and the entire day on Friday. It's not Erev Pesach. You can do that even in the afternoon. The reason, yes, that makes sense. You don't have to, but you could. There's no prohibition against doing any of those things on a regular Friday afternoon. The reason why there is a prohibition to do them on a regular Erev Pesach afternoon is, if I recall correctly, at least according to most opinions, related to the Carbon Pesach, because that's the time that we bought the Carbon Pesach. It's kind of a regular Yom Tov, and therefore it's forbidden to do work. But again, this year it's not Erev Pesach, so you can continue things. However, it says that you should destroy the chametz the same way that you do at the same time that you do every year. Now, to clarify, biblically speaking, from the biblical mitzvah is to destroy the chametz before chatzos, before midday on Erev Pesach, which in halachic terminology, that's called the 7th hour, right? The noon, chatzos, is the end of the 6th hour, so it's going into the 7th hour. However, with Rabbanon, the rabbinic enactment is to, in case you might get the times wrong, we push it back an hour. So we burn all the chametz by the beginning of the 6th hour, by the end of the 5th hour. That's on a regular year, and then we stop eating chametz even another hour before that. So this year there are a number of different opinions, and I'm not going to get now into all the different diyukim and proofs this way and that way, whether or not you should this year. So this year you don't, technically speaking, you could burn your chametz on Friday afternoon, but we don't want you to do that because we're concerned that if you burn your chametz on Friday afternoon, then next year you'll burn your chametz on Erev Pesach in the afternoon, and that's a no-no. So you do it in the morning. Does it have to be done before the 6th hour, or can it be done this year anytime before chatzos? So that depends which rabbi you ask, and every rabbi is going to have their own proof backing up that it must be done before Chatzos, before the 7th hour, before the 6th hour. Practically speaking, it's not really that big of a deal. Just burn it. Here actually, I think we're going to have the fire straight after Shachar, so that's very early in the morning. But if you're doing it in your backyard or whatever, do it before. Again, I forget exactly the time. I think it's approximately 11:45 or 11:55. Just do it before that and be safe according to all opinions, and that's the best. Now, the next big question is selling the chametz. Now, again, in theory, you could sell the chametz a minute before Shabbos. Now, not telling what you should do. You should sell your chametz today. Go to the rabbi, make the kinyan, and appoint him as your agent to sell the chametz. But when does the rabbi actually sell the chametz to the guy? So basically, there are 3 different practices amongst Rabbanim what to do in such a kviyas when it's these days of the week. One is that just like you burn the chametz at the regular time, you sell the chametz regular time. So you're going to sell the chametz within that practice itself. You could split it into 2. Those who will sell the chametz the actual regular time before the 6th hour on Friday, before 11:45 approximately in Chicago, and those who will say the same as every year, but without that hour extra, so before Chatzos. Then you have those who do it immediately before Shabbos. And then you have a third way, which is that they sell the chametz anytime on Friday, either the regular time or on the Friday afternoon, but they add a stipulation into the document that the sale should take effect only on Shabbos at the time, so we're doing the transaction now in a way that it should take effect tomorrow, which, as you can imagine, is a very complicated halachic discussion whether or not it's permissible to do that, because usually we don't do transactions on Shabbos. What does this count as? Anyway, practically, first, so 2 things. First of all, here in Chicago, anybody in this room or on this Zoom probably is selling the chametz through Rabbi Hertz. That means either you go to Rabbi Hertz, or if you go into Rabbi Epstein also doesn't actually sell the chametz to a guy. He joins with Rabbi Hertz's sale. Rabbi Hertz is planning, as far as I could understand from him, if I understood him correctly, he's planning to sell it on Friday afternoon before Shabbos, which means that that you burn. So you're going to burn the chametz on Friday morning. You obviously, as we'll discuss soon, going to keep chametz to have for the Shabbos meals lechem mishnah. But if you want to keep more chametz, if you want to have a bottle of beer on Friday afternoon or whatever it is, you could continue sort of, quote, being busy with your chametz until closer to Shabbos when the sale actually takes effect. Once the sale takes effect, now the chametz belongs to the goy. It's not yours to touch anymore. Practically speaking, I don't know if it's so recommended. I'll just say that what I personally plan to do is after the time of the chametz burn the chametz, and that's it. I'm done with the chametz, with the exception of obviously I'm going to leave out what I need for lechem mishnah for the 2 meals of Shabbos. But besides for that, put everything away, and that's included in the sale, and I'm done with it. And also, it's important, if you have kids, if you don't have kids, it's irrelevant. Anything that's not chametz, but for whatever reason it's your custom not to eat it on Pesach, whether it's gebroks or kitnias or manufactured products, whatever your personal standards and customs are, there's no reason not to have them in your house and not to eat them for those 24 hours from 11:45 on Friday till 11:45 on Shabbos. So buy bamba, buy whatever they have in the store thing. If you need for yourself, for your kids, there's plenty of snacks and things that you could have that are, of course, anything that you're going to be cooking. If you're going to be using your Pesach utensils, don't cook in your Pesach utensils anything that you don't use on Pesach. If you're careful not about not eating peel on Pesach, then don't cook something with peels and in your Pesach utensils. But anything that you could buy from the store, that's fine. So Kanana, nowadays where you could get there's so much variety. There's really no need to patchka around with chametz other than what you actually need for the Shabbos meals.
Sell the chametz in your document or whatever.
Yeah.
You put except for the 2 loaves of bread.
You don't need. I don't know. Some rabbis. Some rabbis will add such a clause into the shtar. Some don't, but it doesn't matter. It's sort of you obviously are not intending to sell the chametz which you're leaving out to use. You're only selling the chametz which you're putting aside in those places which you're selling the chametz. Now, Okay, let's move on to what you actually need for the chametz for Shabbos. So there are at least 3 or 4 different ways of how to do the Shabbos meals, and I'll just share with you the basic options and what I personally plan to do and think is the most convenient option, especially if you have kids and Pesach is very OCD invoking. You don't want to be dealing with chametz. Oh, one more important thing is, obviously, if you, for whatever reason, buy chametz after the sale is done, then that's not included in the sale. So if something gets into you and you decide on Friday just before Shabbos, oh, I really want a beer, and you go and buy a beer, technically that's fine, but that's not included in the sale, and so you must make sure to be finished with that beer completely before the time on Shabbos. Now, for the Shabbos meals, so you have to have lechem mishnah. That's 2 loaves of bread. You also have to eat. There's different opinions. We've discussed this in the past, but the best way to do it is to have more than a kibbeh, more than an egg size of bread for each meal on Shabbos, Friday night and Shabbos day. Now, in theory, on the Friday night meal, you could do your lechem mishnah with matzah. But the custom is not, the Chabad custom is ready from Purim not to eat any matzah. A Shabbos day, you're not allowed to have matzah. You're not allowed to eat any matzah on Erev Pesach. In theory, you could also use egg matzah, but again, practically speaking, to eat the right amounts, and it's not the recommended route. So the recommended route is to use loaves of bread that don't make crumbs, and the best option is pita. Pita breads, I mean, they make some crumbs, but not like a regular challah. And each pita, before you cut it open, a complete pita, even though it has a hollow pocket in the middle, that doesn't matter. That's considered a whole loaf. So you take 2 pita breads. Now, I don't know exactly how much a pita bread weighs and how much is a kibbeh, but if you eat 1 whole pita bread, you're for sure good. You could wash, sail into the Sedayim, fulfill your Shabbos meal with that, and bench. So there's a few different options how to do it. One option is that either way, whichever option you're going to take, it's recommended that for the meals of this Shabbos, even though you're using your soup or whatever you're going to be eating is going to be cooked in Pesach utensils, but that your actual meal should be eaten with paperware, with disposables. And the main reason for that is because you're going to have chametz in your mouth. You don't want to start sticking your Pesach forks and spoons into your mouth because with the crumbs, it's not a good idea. And you should not, if you are going to use any chametz utensils, then don't pour from the Pesach utensils into the chametz utensils. Pour from the Pesach utensils into a disposable pan, and from there into your chametz utensils. But again, we live in a generation where to get disposables is so easy and cheap, and just use disposables. That's the best idea. That's for the actual meal. So that's when you're going to have your all the things. So there's a few ways to do it. One is you could set up your regular dining room table, make kiddush with a becher that's the chametz sticker becher, not your Pesach becher. Then wash. Everybody has their pita bread over a napkin. Then you finish with that. Take the napkin, flush it down the toilet, and then continue your meal again with your paperware bench thing. Now you can do that. That's perfectly legitimate. You might even say that's the best way to do it. The downside of that method is that having crumbs in your dining room that you're going to be using for Pesach, even though you could clean up and it's fine, it's many people are uncomfortable with that. Now, an important thing to point out, if you do that option, or if you do a thing, is that on Shabbos day, I don't recall exactly what the time for the end of eating chametz is, but let's just pull out of that 10:30. It's probably a little bit later than that, right? So we're going to daven very early on Shabbos to make sure we could finish. Davening is going to be 7:30 on Shabbos to make sure we could finish and you could have finish your chametz by that time. So if you during a meal, any meal, Shabbos meal, you don't make brachas on all the foods that you're eating during the meal because those foods are considered to be subsidiary to the bread. The bread is the mainstay of the meal, and then all the other things. Once that time has passed, now nothing can be secondary to the bread. It's past the time for chametz. So then you would have to start making separate brachos on any other food that you would have in the meal, which gets complicated, in which case you just say, once, if let's say, again, we're using 10:30 just as an example, you make kiddush at 10 o'clock, and then you have your challah, and then you're eating your cholent or your whatever you're eating, and then the time for 10:30 comes, just bench, finish your meal, and then you're still hungry, you can make another bracha and continue eating as you would just any snack. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to have another place where you're going to do the chametz part of the meal. And so it could be in the kitchen, table, like somewhere which is going to be blocked off for Pesach, or in your back porch, outdoors or somewhere. Make kiddush over there, wash, have your bread over there, and then go inside to your Pesach table and have the rest of your meal then, again with the paperware and everything. The challenge then becomes is that, like we just said, everything is secondary to the bread, but how could you, I'm having my bread over there and my the rest of my meal over there, and you get into all these questions about whether or not you need to make your own bracha. And so in so many of the guides that you'll see this year, you'll see them saying that if you do that option, at least one person should have more bread again by the table sporadically throughout the meal or the end of the meal. Again, different guides have different approaches. The reason why they're saying that is because they want, what they want you to do is to have all the food that you have as part of your Shabbos meal should be within the meal, because it shouldn't just be I'm having chicken. Chicken should be a part of the meal, which certainly is a virtue. But personally, what I think, and I did check this with another Rav, and he agreed with me, that you can be lenient and not have all those foods as part of the meal, and that makes it a lot simpler. So what you would do, this is what I intend to do, wherever, pick your spot where you're going to do the chametz. In my case, it'll probably be on my back deck or something like that. Make kiddush, wash, have your pita bread, and bench. And then you're done. Again, over the napkin. If you're in your backyard or anything, any crumbs that do happen to fall on the floor, you don't need to worry about, because it's trampled and it's dirty and it's only crumbs. Obviously, if it's a big amount, that's not okay. But if it's just crumbs and they're dirty, it's fine. But basically, wrap up your napkin, flush it down the toilet, and bench, and that's it. You're done. And then you go to the table and you have all the rest of your food as you would, and of course, being careful to say all the correct brachas. And usually, you have your chicken soup and your chicken and your kugel, whatever you have. You don't necessarily say a bracha. No, you have to make sure it's just like you're eating a meal thing. It's not the best. You lose out the virtue of having all of those things within the meal, but it's a perfectly acceptable solution for this year. A few things to be careful of. So the becher you're using is going to be your chametz sticker becher. When you finished, you have the end of the wine in there. So on Friday night, you could wash it out, not in your Pesach sink, of course, but in the bathroom, or if you have a chametz sink that's still not blocked up, you could wash it. But on Shabbos day, you can't wash it, because that would be preparing for after Pesach. You're not allowed to wash dishes on Shabbos that you don't need on Shabbos. So, but you might not want to put away the becher with the sticky wine at the bottom, and then it's going to be very hard to get out. So a workaround that I thought of is that you could use, after you finish making kiddush, you could use that same becher to have a drink of water from, and then you put it away in your chametz sticker cabinet, and after Pesach you could wash it with soap if you want to, but it's not going to be all sticky and all, whatever. So that's another thing. Now another thing is the candles. The Shabbos candles are supposed to be in the place that you eat. So some people are careful to put it on the table. Some people put it in the same room to the side, but they're supposed to be in the place that you eat. So on Yom Tov, you're going to eat the Seder nights. You're going to eat in your Yom Tov dining room. But if you're making kiddush and doing like these things, so where do you do your candles? So technically, it's good. You could just put your candles by the dining room, and even though you're not going to make kiddush there, but you're going to be eating other foods there, that's fine. Or perhaps even better is to put the candles in a place where you could see them from where you make kiddush, because it's customary to look at the candles when you make kiddush. You just have to bear in mind that afterwards the candles are muktzah. So, for example, if you're going to use tea lights, let's say you leave your candlesticks for the dining room, you use that for the Seder night, and for Friday night you'll put tea lights in the kitchen or somewhere where you could see them from where you're going to make kiddush. The burnt out tea lights are muksa. So if you want to get rid of them, you can do kilach hayad. You pick it up like this and you brush it into the garbage. That's fine. But you can't just pick them up and put them in the garbage. That would be muktzah. So that's basically the Seder for Shabbos day, and anything that's left over for Friday night, Shabbos day, anything that's left over, you flush down the toilet, and that's it.
You wrap up everything, throw it in garbage, and throw it in the garbage.
Oh, so putting things in the garbage. So if it's
Not
just
in the alley.
so if it's just crumbs, if it's a little kazayis to put it in the garbage on Shabbos, not sure because technically you probably could. Again, talking, I want to clarify, talking if you live here in this neighborhood, not at Winston Towers. I'm actually there is someone on the line from Winston Towers, and there's another person online from Evanston, and another person online from somewhere, another city. So different, every place is different. Here in this side of the neighborhood, we have a very easy thing with the garbage pails because it doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the city, and it's not in our domain, it's in the alley. So technically you could put chametz in there. If you live in a place where the garbage is in your property, which includes Winston Towers, because they have a thing, I would recommend that not just on Shabbos, already from I don't know how often they take away the garbage on Winston Towers, but any garbage, any chametz any piece of chametz, not talking about crumbs, any piece of chametz that's in your garbage, if let's say you put it into the garbage on Thursday and it's still there on Shabbos, that's a problem because it's in your property, it's in your domain, right? The common areas of Winston Towers, if you live in Winston Towers, you pay your assessments. That's the thing. So in that case, the best thing to do is that for a few days before Pesach, any chametz that you're putting in the garbage, pour some bleach on it. Pour bleach to make sure it's completely disqualified from human consumption and if possible even from animal consumption, and that way you don't need to be concerned about it. However, I should point out that if you don't use the Erev, we've discussed this before, if you don't use the Erev, not only can you not take out garbage on Shabbos, you really can't take out garbage on Yom Tov either, because on Yom Tov you're only allowed to carry something that I need on Yom Tov. I'm going out, I need my key, so I could carry my key. But when you're carrying garbage, you don't need your garbage in the alley. You don't want it in your house, but you don't need your garbage in the alley. So it's problematic. Some poskim allowed to do it if it's garbage that's smelly. So if you have a garbage bag full of apple peels, I think some poskim do allow you to take it out into the alley, but certainly not like things which are dry, which wouldn't smell, like empty bottles of grape juice and empty matzah, cardboard boxes, anything like that. Certainly you can't take out in Yom Tov. So what I personally do is when we have a Yom Tov, and certainly now, is that I'll bring one of the garbage pails into my backyard. So this way I can take out regular Shabbos, so your piles too, maximum you have an extra bag of garbage, but with a 3-day Yom Tov, there's lots of garbage. So I'm going to bring a pail. So what I'm going to do is on the next Monday, they're going to come and take my garbage. I'm going to make sure that all of my garbage all goes into one of the pails, and that pail I'm going to leave out in the alley. And just before Shabbos, I'll bring in the other pail into my backyard. And any garbage over Shabbos and the first day's Yom Tov, I'm going to put into that pail. But two things. First of all, obviously I have to be careful not to put in any chametz. And B, I'm going to lose out the pickup because the second day Yom Tov is Monday, and I'm going to lose out on that pickup, and I'll have to deal with that. But in this neighborhood they pick up on Monday. But okay, so that's about the garbage. Now, okay, cleaning out your mouth. So first of all, I actually saw here that he brings, I think, from the Rabbi Hashab, that you should really finish eating your chametz, whatever the time is, finish eating half hour, 45 minutes before. Like this, you have time to process, you eat and drink other things, so anything that's stuck gets washed out. But let's talk about the process of cleaning out and dealing with chametz stuck in your mouth. So first of all, we mentioned this last week, I want to review it again with some more details. Kashering your mouth. If you have anything in your mouth that's external, whether it's a piece of metal, or braces, retainers, or even fillings, so there is a concern that you have to kasher them because it's external. Now, we could debate as to whether or not it's actually 100% necessary. I mean, we don't kasher our teeth, mouth year round between eating milchiks and fleishiks, but nevertheless, the custom is that we do kasher them for Pesach. As we know, Pesach we do all the chumras. So how do you kasher your teeth? So first of all, most of the guides of the Pesach guides that you're going to read will tell you that for 24 hours before you kash your teeth, don't have any hot chametz. So that's because you want to make sure that the taste of any chametz will be problem. Don't have any hot chametz. I mean, you can have something warm, not hot. That's yatsu, not display that's properly hot. Now, the truth is that when it comes to kashering other things, kashering sinks, for example, we're more machmir than that. We say don't just not use it for chametz for 24 hours. Don't use it for anything hot for 24 hours. And some of the Pesach guides will say if you want to do even more chumrah, so don't eat anything hot for 24 hours. That's different opinions as to exactly how the Ben Yomei thing works. Again, I'm just going to share with you all the different things different Pesach guides say, and based on your circumstance, you'll choose which one to do. Whatever you do is valid. Okay, then to actually kash your mouth. If you have anything retained or whatever things that could come out of your mouth, then you kash them by pouring boiling hot water on them, and just to the maximum that it won't get ruined. But if it's just about fillings and whatever that don't come out, so you clean your mouth very thoroughly, you brush, you floss, and this year you're going to do all of this before Shabbos with your chametz stick toothbrush, and you're going to clean out your mouth very thoroughly, and then you drink hot water, as hot as you can take without burning yourself. You drink hot water to extract any taste that might be in the thing, and use a disposable cup. Don't use a disposable cup for that. If you want to be really, really chumrah, I saw some people have a chumrah that if they have fillings for the entirety of Pesach, they don't eat anything that's boiling hot. They wait till everything's cooled off, so it's less than yatsu lettuce boy, which there's different opinions spanning from 140 degrees to well, I don't remember all the opinions of yatsu lettuce, but they basically don't eat anything boiling hot for the entirety of Pesach because you can't really kasher your teeth with them properly. So some people, again, these are all chumras, ask your local competent Orthodox rabbi, mashpia, therapist, what's healthy for you. Okay, now that's all done before Shabbos. Now, then you have to also clean out your mouth from chametz and Shabbos. You have all this bread, you want to clean out your mouth before the time comes. So you may not brush your teeth with toothpaste or water on Shabbos. However, you can, unless you have, they do make, actually, you could buy the kosher innovations, have a special rubbery type of toothbrush, which is permissible for Shabbos use. And then there's a question whether or not you could use toothpaste or you have to use mouthwash. I don't know. Personally, I just don't brush my teeth on Shabbos. I'm talking year round. I just don't brush my teeth on Shabbos and that's it. But here you want to be able to clean out your mouth before thing. Now, how much is strictly actually necessary halachically to clean out your mouth and how much it's your obligation to be concerned about that or not? Possibly it's not, but the practice is as much as possible you clean out. So first of all, after you finish eating chametz, you're going to be eating and drinking other foods, so anything that's stuck in between your gums gets sort of washed down that way. Besides for that, you may do any and all of the following things, provided that it's not psikresha that it's going to cause bleeding. Psikresha means definite. So if you're a person who never flosses your teeth, or doesn't do so with any regularity, then chances are that if you floss your teeth, it's going to cause it to bleed, and therefore don't do that. But if you floss your teeth regularly, unless you have something unhealthy, but if you floss your teeth regularly, it's not going to cause any bleeding, and there's no reason not to floss your teeth on Erev Pesach. However, you do have to either use the pickers or use pre-cut pieces of floss. You can't actually cut the floss on Shabbos. You could brush your teeth with a dry toothbrush, no water and no toothpaste again. Gently so it doesn't cause any bleeding, and also you could use toothpicks. Any of these activities, try it out before Shabbos. Look in the mirror, do it, and see, does it cause you to bleed? Any of those things that don't cause you to bleed is perfectly permissible and I would say even advisable to do on Shabbos after you finish eating before the time. If you want to, also another thing you could do is, so we're careful on Shabbos, the Chabad custom is to be careful from Erev Pesach, which means from Shabbos morning, not to eat any of the ingredients that are part of the Seder plate, the Mara, the Charesis, and the Mara and the Charesis. So no lettuce, no apples, no pear, and no walnuts. So like an apple might be a good thing that gets stuck in between your teeth. So that would be a good thing to eat to sort of wash out anything else that's in between your teeth. But you could have other things that are not Pesach foods, but I don't know, bamba or other foods that are very messy that get in between your teeth, and that's bamba's kidneys. I'm not worried if it's kosher on Pesach. I'm not worried about a piece of bamba being stuck in between your teeth. But so that's another thing you could do. What else? Okay, we already spoke about kasher, cleaning your mouth, your teeth. Oh, okay. Now moving on for the rest of Shabbos. So, but it's an interesting Shabbos because by 10:30, 11 o'clock, you finish your Shabbos meal, which for some people that's normal, but for us, that's, we usually don't have our Shabbos meal so early. So it's a long day. You may not do anything to prepare for the Seder on Shabbos. So as much as possible now. So we have here this conflict. On the one hand, you're not allowed to do anything on Shabbos to prepare for the Seder. On the other hand, we do have a very strong value to start the Seder as early as possible. You daven Ma'ariv at the time for Ma'ariv, don't wait around, and then you come home right away and start the Seder right away. The main reason being because you want the children to be awake and participatory as much as possible for the Seder. Now, strongly advisable for all adults and children to have a nap on Shabbos, to have energy for the Seder, although many Pasuk say that you should not explicitly say that you're doing this in order to have energy for the Seder, because that's explicitly saying preparing for Shabbos. However, there's room to be lenient about that, because you're not, if you say I'm going to sleep to be able to drive through the night, that's forbidden, because driving is something you're not allowed to do on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But if you're saying I'm sleeping now, so I should have koyach to stay up tonight, so staying up tonight is something that's permissible activity on Shabbos, staying up. So the reason for yourself, you're saying I'm going to have a nap, it's fine. But if you're dealing with kids and trying to get kids to you have to say no. If you don't sleep now, you're not going to have koyach to say the man. If you need to do that with your kids, that's fine. But again, other than that, you need to make sure everything is done before Shabbos. So let me give you some useful advice. First of all, prepare before Shabbos everything that's possible. So you're going to check your matzahs to make sure how you check that there's no foldings in the ends of the matzahs, kfulas. Do that before Shabbos. Prepare even, you need to have however many people you have, the shleimus, whole matzahs. Prepare them before Shabbos, so you have already a box with all your shleimus. You could just go 1, 2, 3. You don't need to start sifting through the matzahs on, say, the night. The lettuce, make sure it's checked and dried properly before Shabbos, and put it in the fridge. Again, you want to make sure it's dry, because if it's besides the fact that the lettuce that you use for chazaris has to be properly dry, because you put it in the koyrich sandwich, and we're careful about the brooks. But in addition to that, if you put any lettuce with any moisture in the fridge for 24 hours, it's going to start getting brown, and so you want to make sure it's thoroughly dry. Put it in. Make sure you grind your chrein before Shabbos. Make sure you prepare your salt water before Shabbos. Make sure you cook your eggs, your zroya, all of these things to do before Shabbos. Maybe I should go through quickly what happens if you didn't. If you didn't do it, so like this. So lettuce you could prepare on Shabbos, you could do on Yom Tov. If you do find a bug, you can't just take off the bug or wash it off. You should really take off the bug, rip it off together with a piece of lettuce. Cooking the eggs you can do on Yom Tov. Of course, you can't cook more than what you need for that first day of Yom Tov. You can't cook on the first Saturday night, the first night of Yom Tov. You can't cook what you need for the second Seder. The zroya, if you didn't roast the bone before Shabbos, so then it's a problem, because we're careful not to eat. You can't cook it on Yom Tov because we're careful not to eat the meat of the zroya. But you could cook it and eat some of the meat the next day. We're only careful not to eat that meat at the Seder night. You could cook it the next day. But another option is just, instead of using, like our custom is, to use the roasted chicken bone, if for whatever reason you didn't prepare a zroya before Shabbos, just put any piece of meat, any piece of cooked meat on the Seder plate. That counts as the zroya. What else is there? Salt water you can prepare on Shabbos, on Yom Tov with a shinoi. So first of all, you put in. Usually you would put the water first and then the salt. I think that's what they say. So you should put the salt first and then the water. And also you should only make a little bit amount to exactly what you need for the Seder, not anymore. Again, try and get into your schedule to do all these things before Shabbos. The chrein, what happens if you didn't grind the chrein before Shabbos? So the pashtus, then you cannot grind it on Yom Tov. You just have to cut it with a knife into small pieces. I saw Rabbi Ashkenazi from Kfar Chabad. He has a workaround, and he says that you can grind it on Yom Tov with a shinoi. So that means if you have a grinder and a hand grinder, obviously not an electric one, and you grind it onto the tablecloth instead of onto a plate, or you hold it upside down or something like that, you can do that on Yom Tov. I'm not sure, it's debatable whether or not that works according to the Alter Rebbe. Again, do all of these things before Shabbos. Now, okay. Eating on Shabbos, so you're allowed to continue eating, even no more chametz. So you can't have chametz bread, you can't have matzah bread, but anything else you could continue eating until the 10th hour of the day. After the 10th hour of the day, what's the 10th hour of the day? 10th hour of the day is a Shabbos Manias. So people familiar with Shabbos Manias, it basically means you take the daylight hours and divide it by 12, and each one of those is one Shabbos Manias. At this time of the year, it's just a few minutes more than an hour. It's 63 minutes or so. So from approximately 3 hours before sunset is the 10th hour of the day. You don't eat anything big or just a small snack if you're hungry, in order to make sure that you're left with an appetite to eat your matzah and your Seder with an appetite. So practically speaking, that's approximately 4 p.m. on Shabbos, give or take a few minutes. So after 4 p.m. on Shabbos, you really shouldn't be eating too much. Now, preparations for the Seder. So the men are going to be in shul. The women are going to be at home. So Shabbos goes, so there's two times. There's nightfall, and then every Shabbos there's nightfall, and then we add Tosefos Shabbos. We add a few minutes to Tosefos Shabbos. So usually the time of the calendar adds about 10 or 15 minutes. So preparations for the Seder that are melacha, that involve things that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, for example, lighting Yom Tov candles, that may not be done until after the time for Motzei Shabbos, which in Chicago is, I think, 7:53, right? But preparations that don't involve melacha, that the reason you're not allowed to do them on Shabbos is not because it's forbidden Shabbos activity, but only because it's preparation for after Shabbos. Those may be done from Tzeis HaKechavim, so that gives you an extra 10-15 minutes. I wrote down here 7:40. So from 7:40 on Shabbos afternoon, the women can start setting the table for the Seder to get things in motion, so that as soon as the men come home from shul, they can start the Seder right away, provided that before they do so, they say Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh Le Kodesh. Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh Le means, that's what they say every Shabbos, which means making the division between the holy and the mundane. But here it's not holy and mundane, it's the division between holy and holy. So they say Baruch HaMavdil at 7:40, which is 13 minutes before the candle lighting time on the calendar. They could say Baruch HaMavdil Min Kodesh L'Kodesh, and then spring into action and have an extra 10-15 minutes or so to 13 minutes to get things set up for the Seder. Another thing, we do mention this every year, that the women have to also use those few minutes to say Hallel, even though they don't have to daven Ma'ariv, but they do. Those who have the custom, as does Chabad, that you say Hallel on the Seder night, so we say it in shul after Ma'ariv, but the women also have. Sorry. Yeah, so we say Hallel 3 times on the first day's Pesach. Once by Shachris in the morning davening, we say it during the Seder, but we also say Hallel and Ma'ariv before the Seder. So the women also have to say after the Seder is too late, because the main reason we say it before the Seder is because you have to say Hallel, so we say it with the Seder, but by the Seder you can't say a bracha because we split it up into 2 different parts. So you say the whole thing with the bracha before the Seder. So in addition to all the preparing for Yom Tov, the women need to take a few minutes to say Hallel with a bracha, which again, that they could do from 7:40. They don't need to wait 7:53, and for that they don't even need to say Baruch Hamavdil. They could just, the clock strikes 7:40. They could say Baruch Atah Hashem, say Hallel, and then get on with preparing for Yom Tov. Also, of course, this year we have quite a number of times, the record amount of times Yak Nahaz, that we have Shabbos going into Yom Tov, and we have that special procedure which we call Yak Nahaz, which is a Kiddush Havdalah combo. So we're going to do that at the first Seder night this year. And again, don't say Baruch Hamavdil Min Kodesh L'Chol. You're going to have lots of questions about how to deal with that, and you're going to come running 5 blocks to knock on my door to ask me what to do. Just follow all the instructions carefully. So you say Yak Nahaz Baruch Hamavdil Min Kodesh L'Kodesh, and we're going to do Yak Nahaz again on the 7th night of Pesach, going into the last day. Right? That's again Shabbos into Yom Tov. So again, we're going to do Yak Nahaz over then. There's also another difference, which in the Seder, the bracha for the second cup, which is the end of the recitation of the Haggadah, we say that we should be merit to go to Yerushalayim and eat them in Hazvachim and Hamsachim, to eat from the Zvachim, which means Karbanos, sacrifices that were brought supplementary together with the Karban Pesach, and Hamsachim is the Karban Pesach. However, when we're eating the Seder on Matzah Shabbos, so if Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, you can bring the Karban Pesach because that's mandatory, but the other Karbanos, which are optional, we don't bring. And so when the Seder is on Saturday night, like the first one is this year, we switch around the Seder, and instead of saying, we switch around the order, instead of saying Min Hazvachim and Min Hapsachim, we say Min Hapsachim or Min Hazvachim. It's in your Haggadah, just pay attention to it. And just, the shaded area for Saturday night, substitute this for that, pay attention to that. Okay, there's still, we did a very, very brief overview last week about kashering the kitchen. What I hope to do next week is more reviewing laws and minhagim of the actual Seder. So if anybody has specific questions that's relevant to kashering their kitchen. No, when we do Yak Nahaz, there's different customs. The Chabad custom is that when you say the bracha on the candle, you just look at the candles that are there. The Yom Tov candles are there, so you just look at them. You don't do your nails or anything like that. You just look at those candles when you say the bracha.
We don't there's no last one there.
No, there is. Yak Nahaz. Yak Nahaz stands for Yayin Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman. So a regular Kiddush of Yom Tov is Yayin. That means you start off by saying the bracha on wine, Beri Pri Agafen. Then you say the bracha of Kiddush, which is Asher Bracha Bonu Mikolam until Mekadosh Yisrael Hazmanim, which talks about the Yom Tov in this case of Pesach. And then you say Shechayanu. Zman. It's Zman, and Zman Hazet, right? Zman and Shechayanu. When it's Havdalah, we have to add in two brachas. One is Ner, Beri Me'er Ha'ish. We don't do the spices, but you do Beri Me'er Ha'ish. And the actual bracha of Havdalah, Hamavdol Ben Kodesh L'Chodesh, and Baruch Atah Hashem Hamavdol Ben Kodesh L'Chodesh. And the order is Yak Nahaz, Yayin, Beri Pri Agafen, Kiddush, then Ner, which is Beri Me'er Ha'ish, then Havdalah, and then Shechayanu comes at the very end. An interesting thing which I learned this year for the first time, something important to have in mind, and this is relevant both to men who are saying very important. Women, so the custom is usually on the Yom Tov, women are usually going to hear Kiddush and fulfill the Kiddush from listening to the husband, or whoever the man of the table is. On Pesach, because everybody has the 4 cups of wine, so everyone makes their own Kiddush. We've discussed this in the past. There's different customs about how to do that. If everybody is proficient in Hebrew, so then everyone should hold the cup and say the whole Kiddush themselves. If some people are not fluent in Hebrew, so then they could be quiet and listen. So they hold the cup, but instead of reciting the Kiddush, they discharge their obligation by listening to whoever is saying the Kiddush. But in that case, you can't have everybody saying it loud in unison, because the halacha is that you can only hear one voice at a time. You can't hear 2 voices at a time. So if you have 10 people around the table and 9 of them are saying Kiddush loud, then the 10th one who wants to hear it, has a problem, because it's not considered hearing 9 voices at once. So in that case, only one person should say Kiddush loud, and everybody else should either say it afterwards together or just say it in an undertone together with him. Whichever way the women are doing it, whether they're saying it themselves or they're being Yotza from the husband, they don't do the Zah of Yak Nahaz. They don't say Shechayonu. Why? Because they already said Shechayonu when they lit candles. Right? The women, when they light the candles, before the Seder, they say Lahad L'Kaner Shel Yom Tov, and they say Shechayonu. Of course.
When?
Before the Seder. Anytime after 7:53, they have to light candles. And those are the candles. And when you say the bracha on the candle, as part of your Havdalah Kiddush combo, those are lit already, and you're going to look at them. You're not going to look at your nails, but you're going to look at those candles. Other people have another custom. That's how the Chabad custom. So they already said Shechayonu, so they don't say it again as part of the Kiddush. However, so this is an interesting thing.
Are they allowed?
Go on.
You have to have an existing flame for
Yes, you have to have an existing flame. So it's recommended this year. Usually you say buy a 24-hour candle. Unless if you have a gas stove, you could just take from there. But if this year, if you want to do the candle thing, which is much easier, you just leave it right by the candles. Get a 48-hour candle because you're going to be lighting it on Friday night, and you need it to last till the second night Yom Tov. So get at least a 48-hour candle, and then for the second days you need a 24-hour candle. Some have accustomed to light another candle for Yizkor for the last days. So an important thing I want to point out about Shechianu, which is this is relevant both to the men who are going to say Shechianu as part of Kiddush, and to the women who are going to say Shechianu as part of the candle lighting, and that is like this. Just to move away from Pesach to explain, to give you a parallel, on Sukkot, there's a number of mitzvahs that come together. So it's the Yom Tov, like we always say Shechianu on the Yom Tov, like Shavuos, we also say Shechianu, even though there's no specific mitzvah related to Shavuos. And then on Sukkah, we also have the mitzvah of sitting in the Sukkah. So why don't we say Shechianu when you build the Sukkah or when you sit in the Sukkah for the first time? The answer is that the Shechianu that you say in the Kiddush, which in most scenarios will also be the first time you're sitting in the Sukkah, although there are exceptions, that Shechianu goes on the building of the Sukkah as well. Let's not talk about the exceptions. Right, so it says, so usually any mitzvah that you do once a year, you say Shechianu. So there's a mitzvah that we do once a year before Pesach. That's the mitzvah of Bir Chametz. Oh, another very important thing I forgot. Okay, I'll get back to that in a second. So the mitzvah of Bir Chametz. So why don't you say Shechianu, when you check for Chametz, which is that's the beginning of your mitzvah of destroying Chametz, you say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos tzivanu al Bir Chametz. So you should also say Shechianu. Why don't you say Shechianu? So the answer is because the Shechianu that you're going to say in Yom Tov, it's a Shechianu that covers all the things to do with the mitzvahs of Yom Tov. And so I heard this for the first time this year from Rabbi Farkash. He said that when you say Shechianu on the first night of Pesach, you should have in mind that this Shechianu also covers the B'dikas Chametz and the destroying of the Chametz that we did on Friday. A very important thing that I forgot to mention is that usually we say Kol Chamira twice. Kol Chamira is the nullification of Chametz, which is printed in the Seder in Aramaic, but it says in Shulchan Aruch that it's vital that you understand what you're saying, so say it in whatever language you understand. So you say it twice. Once is after B'dikas Chametz, which is you nullify any Chametz that you did not find. And then you say it again on a regular year, you would say it again when you're burning the Chametz to nullify any Chametz that you may have found and then put aside and you forgot about it. This year, the one that you say after checking for chametz, you say, but the one that you would usually say at the burning of the chametz, you don't say then, because how you can't say that I'm nullifying all chametz. What do you mean? You still have your 5 pita breads that you're leaving for your Shabbos meal. So you say kol chamira on Shabbos after you finish flushing everything down the toilet and doing everything you need to do. Then you say the kol chamira. Very, very important not to forget that. Okay, if there's any questions about this or about kasher in your kitchen or anything, I'm happy to try to address them now or later, whatever. Okay, yes. Oh, one second, we have a question in the chat. Why not use Pesach Becher? Why not use Pesach Becher? Because you're going to be having, you're going to be eating pita bread. You don't want to have the Pesach Becher comes in such close context to the Pesach Becher.
So you push it aside.
You want to have your Pesach Becher on the same table as you have crumbs?
Take it off the table. You're not using the becher at the same time as you're eating the crumbs.
Oh, Connie doesn't want to show up in person?
Okay, I hear you. Look, it's best practice. In other words, Connie, I've probably read about 5 different Pesach guides over the last week. And that's one thing that they all said the same. Everything else, I had to start picking and choosing who I'm going to go according to. That one, they all said, use your chametz becher. You're right. Technically, you could use your Pesach becher and make sure it doesn't come in contact. You could do that, but I guess yeah. All right.
The other question: What do we do Shabbos morning for Lechem Mishnah?
You're saying you're planning to sleep in?
Not planning on Kiddush at 10 o'clock. That's like in the middle of the night.
Right. So yeah. So if you daven, if you get verchapt in your davening, and you don't finish davening, then it's too bad. Then you've missed your opportunity to do Lecha Mishnah.
I'm saying the accepted practice is that we daven earlier and do
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. If you want to, according to the diaries over here, in the last time in Tafshin Mem Aleph, I think, or Mem Daled or something, that there was such a kliyas, the Rebbe walked into Shachris at 6:45.
All right. That's
Honey, just
wow.
do it before you go to sleep.
Okay.